Hello everyone, welcome to week 2 lecture videos. Our today's topic is risks of financial institutions and we are covering chapter 4 this week. We have two major learning objectives. First one is we will understand the significance of different types of risk financial institutions are exposed to. For example, interest rate risk, market risk, credit risk, and so on. And we will also understand the interconnectedness among these risks financial institutions are exposed to. First of all, we will start with interest rate risk. In chapter 1, we discussed asset transformation as a key financial function of a financial intermediary. Asset transformation involves a financial institution buying primary securities or assets and issuing secondary securities or liabilities to fund asset purchases. The primary securities purchased by financial institutions often have maturity and liquidity characteristics different from those of secondary securities financial institutions sell. In mismatching these maturities of assets and liabilities as part of their asset transformation function exposes themselves to interest rate risk. To understand this interest rate risk, let's start with this example. A financial institution grants a 5-year maturity loan at an interest rate of 12%, fixed interest rate of 12%, and funds this loan with a 1-year maturity fixed term deposits that pays 10% per annum. So you understand that loan matures in 5 years, whereas the deposit matures in 1 year. So, and interest rate the bank earns is 12% from the loan and pays 10% to depositor, so earns a 12% net interest income. Is the financial institution exposed to increasing or decreasing interest rate in this circumstance? Well, you understand that since loan has a maturity of 5 years, which is financed with a 1-year term deposit, after every 1 year, bank has to roll over this deposit. Now, if interest rate changes when bank rolls over, bank may expose to a risk. For example, after 1 year, when bank rolls over this term deposit, if interest rate goes up to, let's say, 13% from 10%, so bank has to pay 13% to its depositor, whereas bank still get 12% from its loan. So bank will have a negative 1% net interest income. It means that bank is exposed to increasing interest rates. This is known as refinancing risk. On the other hand, if we just reverse the example, would the financial institution still be exposed to the same risk if the loan had a 1-year maturity and the maturity of deposit was 3 years? So in this case, loans maturity is 1 year and deposits maturity is 3 years. So what's happening is after 1 year, the bank has to roll over this loan. Now, initially this loan interest rate was 12% and deposits interest rate was 10%. So after 1 year, when the bank rolls over this loan, if interest rate declines from 12% to say 9%, it means that bank will earn 9% on its loan. However, it still pays 10% to its depositor. It means again there will be a 1% negative net interest income. It means that in this circumstance, the bank is exposed to decreasing interest rate, which is known as reinvestment risk. Now, conceptually, one point we need to understand that a value of any asset or liability is the present value of the cash flows associated with the asset and liability. Now, to find out present value, we discount the cash flows using a discount rate. And as this discount rate goes up, the present value goes down. It means that there is an inverse relationship between value of assets and liabilities with the interest rate changes. So if interest rate increases, value of asset and liability decreases. On the other hand, if interest rate decreases, value of asset and liability increases. Now, if maturity of asset and liability matches, then with a change in interest rate, the change in value of asset will be the same as the change in value of liabilities, so bank won't be exposed to interest rate risk. However, typically there is a mismatch between asset and liability maturities, which exposes banks to interest rate risk. For example, assume that maturity of asset exceeds the maturity of liabilities. Now, if interest rate increases, then value of asset and liabilities both decline. However, asset value will decline more because assets maturity is longer. On the other hand, as the interest rate decreases, value of asset and liability both will increase. However, asset value will increase more than the liability value. So the bank will be in a better position. On the other hand, if maturity of liabilities exceeds the maturity of assets, a decrease in interest rate once again will increase the value of asset and liabilities. However, the value of liability will increase more since the maturity of liability is higher. On the other hand, an increase in interest rate will decrease the value of asset and liabilities both, but liability value will decrease more as the liability maturity is longer. Okay, so you can see that when there is a mismatch between asset and liability maturities, the change in interest rate exposes banks to different types of risks. Either the value of liability goes up, then the value of asset, or value of asset goes down more than the value of liabilities. Now, if holding assets and liabilities with mismatched maturities exposes financial institutions to reinvestment, refinancing, or market value risk, financial institutions can hedge or protect against interest rate risk by matching the maturity of asset and liabilities. However, we need to realize that a bank cannot be a perfect matcher at the same time earning the profitability, because as the banks matches maturity of assets and liabilities, bank's profitability will decline, because it's one of the major function of the bank to repackage its liabilities with its assets. So it's a two-way problem that in one way mismatching exposes banks to interest rate risk. However, as the bank tries to reduce this mismatching and matches asset and liability, that will negatively affect its profitability. We will discuss this point later more detail. The second risk we want to discuss today is market risk. Market risk is the bank's exposure to the overall market movement. And this risk particularly arises when bank has the portfolio of assets and liabilities that bank they tend to trade in the market rather than holding them until maturity. Okay, banks typically have two types of books. For example, trading books and banking books. Trading books hold the assets and liabilities. Those are relatively those are relatively shorter maturity compared to the assets and liabilities they hold in banking books. A banking book is essentially the investment book. It means that it holds the assets and liabilities for the investment purpose, whereas the trading book holds the assets and liabilities for trading purpose. So you understand that this trading book or trading portfolio is more exposed to market risk, since the bank tends to sell the assets and liabilities of this trading book more frequently in the market. And as the market condition changes, for example, if there is a crash in the market like what we had in global financial crisis, the value of the overall portfolio will be negatively affected. So that's all of our discussion in this video. We will be discussing about other risks in the next learning videos. Thank you very much.